Imagine this. You want to make the transition to electric cars, but you're not quite yet ready for full EV. What do? Well, you could buy two cars, one petrol and one electric, or you could buy two cars in one, like this. The Mercedes-Benz GLE 350DE is a plug-in hybrid, which means that you've got an engine and an electric motor both on board the car, and both of which are capable of propelling you along all on their own. The big difference, however, with this plug-in hybrid, or PHEV, is that the engine is diesel. While most PHEVs use a petrol engine in combination with an electric motor, the GLE has a 2-litre diesel under the bonnet. In fact, it's the only plug-in hybrid SUV on sale today that isn't part powered by petrol. Rivals such as the BMW X5 xDrive 45e, Audi Q7 TFSIe and Volvo XC90 Recharge are all fueled with unleaded. To me, this seems like the perfect combination. A big, torquey diesel engine for longer journeys and a smaller electric motor for just driving around town. But does it work out like that? Is it as good as it sounds on paper? Well, before I begin to answer that, I should point out that the GLE isn't just plug-in hybrid only. You've got 3 choices on offer if you want diesel power and 3 variants for petrol power, including a ridiculous 612 horsepower AMG 63S version. Every model comes with an auto gearbox and 4MATIC all-wheel drive, while the 350DE, as tested here, is the only one that can run on pure electric power. Right, first things first, as I'm sure you've noticed from the exterior shots of this car, it is absolutely ginormous. And it's the same story in here, because it doesn't matter what kind of build you are, how wide you are, how tall you are, you're going to have tons of room in the GLE cabin. It's the same story for your passenger as well. And in fact, don't forget, this isn't the largest SUV that Mercedes-Benz makes. So if you're thinking about buying one of these, then it's also probably worth looking at the GLC, which is a smaller model than this as well, because I guarantee that this is going to be bigger than you think it will be. And one thing I love about this cabin is just how special it feels. In the older GLE, it was really beginning to feel a bit dated in its later life, and it kind of lost that appeal to it. But in this, it's completely different. I mean, in perhaps the BMW X5 and the Audi Q7, you've got a more logical layout and it's a little bit more polished. But the design in here, from the nice wood, to the ambient lighting, the 4 vents you've got here, and the very careful use of brushed metal, it really feels special and that you're getting your money's worth, at least when it comes to sitting in the cabin. Obviously, the dashboard is dominated by these two 12.3-inch screens, which have kind of been joined together to make a giant, long, horizontal screen. So you've got the infotainment display there, which I'll talk about in a second, and you've got the main digital dashboard display, which is instead of an analog speedometer, say, in front of you. You can customize this quite a bit, so you can go through different looks and color schemes, but you can also change exactly what's shown in front of you. I mean, there really is a plethora of options. But the important thing is that it's still very, very clear, especially in this classic setting. So I've got my dials on the left and the right, and I've got the speed in the middle. And at the end of the day, that's probably all you want. Everything else is a bit of a bonus. As for the central infotainment screen, well, it's touchscreen, and it's also operated with this touchpad kind of mouse down here, and you've got a little wrist rest for your hand as well. And while I think the rotary dial on the old command system is actually a bit easier to use, this is still pretty intuitive. And I've got to say that, like the digital dashboard display, there's so much customization going on here. I mean, it will take you the entire loan period of the car, if you've got it on PCP, to get used to every single function. But the graphics are spot on, they're super clear, the menu systems are pretty good, could be maybe a little bit easier to navigate, but as I said, there are so many functions on offer that they've had to kind of cram it in somehow. So I'll talk you through some of those features and some of the more interesting ones that you get aside from, you know, your regular DAB radio and your sat nav and all of that stuff, which is pretty par for the course now. But this car has got the energizing comfort or energizing pack fitted, and that basically gives you a number of programs that will make you feel refreshed or vitalized or training or power nap. Hopefully not when you're driving, but basically it plays music and it changes the color of the ambient lighting and it moves the seat to make you feel reinvigorated, which I've not seen on any other car. You've also got the Mercedes Me connected system, so that tells you what the traffic is like coming up. You can also link it to your phone, so you can pre-program the sat nav. There's also the Hey Mercedes voice recognition system, which is, again, it's like normal voice recognition, so you can tell it to, say, turn the climate control down or change the radio station, all without having to take your eyes off the road. But I've got to say, it's probably one of the better voice recognition systems out there. Perhaps not quite as good as what BMW offer, because I've got a BMW long term at the moment, and that is superb on that. But if you haven't tried voice recognition before, then definitely give it a go, because it's an improvement over what we've seen before, and especially over what was on the previous GLE and other Mercedes-Benz products. And the final thing I want to pick out, which is fitted to this car, is the augmented reality sat-nav, because if you're driving down the road and the sat-nav says turn left in 200 yards, then, well, a lot of people don't really know what 200 yards is, and you're trying to pick out the junction, or say there's a roundabout with lots of different exits and you're not quite sure which one it is. This will show you on the infotainment screen, it'll show you an image of where you're heading. There's a camera on the front of the car, and it puts a big blue arrow showing you which way to go and what the street name is. And I think that's pretty clever, actually. It can be a bit distracting, so you need to use it sensibly. But again, it's a feature that I've not seen before and does work pretty well. Standard equipment on the GLE is good and includes adaptive LED headlamps, blind spot assist, active parking assist, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and heated front seats. And here's a little cool feature. If you've ever played that game where you turn your passenger's heated seat on in the summer and make their bum really hot without them noticing, then this car is perfect for it, because it's a Mercedes, you haven't got the seat controls down here, they're on the doors instead, so your passenger can't reach yours. But a thing that you get on Mercedes, you can take control of the passenger side, so not only can I move the seat around, I can also turn the heated seats on as well. I mean, in other ways that would be nice if, you know, your wife, your husband is getting in the car and it's very cold and you want to turn the heated seat on for them, but it's also got a mischievous factor to it as well. Finally, cubby holes, you've got plenty of those. There's a space up here for my sunglasses. You've got two large cup holders down here. There's a wireless charging pad for your phone. Glove box has got loads of room in there. Well, it's also got the scent, the fragrance for the car, which does take up a little bit of space. Central armrest, not too big, but nice and fairly deep actually. And then, well, big bottle, 2 litre bottle. You can squeeze it into the door pockets as well, and it fits no problem at all. So although it's not as much as you get from a couple of other rivals, it's still got plenty of space to put all the bits of flotsam and jetsam that you get when you're driving around a lot. Climb into the back, and it's important to note that while you can get the GLE with 7 seats, you can't get this plug-in hybrid model with 7 seats because of the different packaging that they've had to do because of the introduction of the batteries. And actually, one of the unexpected consequences of that is that you can't get a climate control zone back here. You can get a 4-zone climate control in the 7-seat versions, but if you don't have 7 seats, you don't get that included. So while up front you've got your dual zone climate control, there's nothing back here. And that kind of feels a bit strange in a big family SUV that's expensive as this. I mean, you still get the 2 power points down there, but you don't get to choose your own temperature. But all of that aside, I think the highlight again is just how huge it is back here. I mean, literally legroom, footroom, headroom, even with the panoramic roof fitted, it's again ginormous. I properly feel lost in here. I mean, you've got the ISOFIX points on the outer rear seats, which is good, but then with the Q7, I think you get them on all 3 seats. And again, this is a very usable middle seat because there's a nice flat central tunnel as well. And another nice touch is that the windowsill isn't too high, so kids shouldn't feel sick when they're sitting in the back here. There's also plenty of storage as well. There's a little bit down here by the power points, but you've got these nets behind the front seats. And there's also, I think it's even bigger than the front door pocket, another ginormous pocket down here. So the buzzwords here are space. It's huge.
Regular GLEs get a boot space of 630 litres with all rear seats in place and 2,055 with them folded down. However, because of the repackaging in the plug-in hybrid model, this drops to 490 and 1,915 litres in the 350DE model. That said, it's still a very usable, well-shaped space, and the electronic tailgate is fitted as standard. Before we talk about how the GLE 350DE drives, let's take a look at three of its main rivals. First is the BMW X5 xDrive 45e. It's not the easiest name to remember, but like most BMWs, it does drive incredibly well for a car of this size and has an all-electric range of over 50 miles. Next up is the Audi Q7 TFSIe, which comes in two variants, both powered by a V6 petrol and a 94 kilowatt electric motor. Last but certainly not least is the Volvo XC90 Recharge, which, out of the ones we've mentioned, is the only car to have 7 seats in plug-in hybrid form. Right, back to the GLE.
So let's talk about the most interesting aspect of this car, which is of course the diesel plug-in hybrid powertrain. Now it's got a 194 horsepower, 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo diesel engine teamed with a 136 horsepower electric motor. Together they make 700 Newton meters of torque, which is a lot, and it really pushes you along very nicely indeed. And that's enough for 0 to 62 miles an hour in 6.8 seconds. So despite weighing what this car does, it ain't slow. The all-electric range on this car is better than you get from most plug-in hybrids. It's around 60 miles, and that is a realistic 60 miles, even on a cold day, and that's thanks to a 31 kilowatt battery. If you go to a DC rapid charge, then you can get from about 10 to 80% of charge in around about 20 minutes. So it's still a very usable battery size, very usable range, and very usable recharging times. Claimed fuel economy is 403 miles per gallon, but like with all plug-in hybrids, you need to take that figure with a pinch of salt, because it depends on how many miles you're doing with the engine, and how many miles you're doing with the engine and the electric motor combined, and then how many with the electric motor on its own. So for a real-world example, I drove this car a couple of 100 miles north at the weekend, came back, drove around with a little bit of the electric power going on, didn't charge it once, and I still got 41 miles per gallon, which you might think, oh, it should be higher than that, but remember, that was without any recharging at all. And I can guarantee that a petrol plug-in hybrid that weighs this much and without any charge would be doing a lot less than that. As I alluded to earlier, the overall performance is very strong indeed, and even when you're really revving this 2-litre diesel engine, it's not thrashy or clattery like you can get with some diesels. It still stays very, very refined and works actually really nicely with the petrol engine. It always comes in when you need it to, and it never jumps in unnecessarily. And it's often quite hard to get that transition from engine to electric motor and backwards again just right. And I think the 9-speed automatic gearbox, which is very slick, smooth, and well-timed changes, that also helps with it. One thing I have noticed going through this car's drive modes, and there's a lot of different drive modes, is that you can of course go to all electric mode if you want, where it stays in all electric unless you push past the resistance on the pedal, and you've also got comfort modes and sport modes. But there's a battery level mode, which is there to sustain the charge in the battery, and it also apparently will top it up as well. And you've got that function on other plug-in hybrid cars. That's not unusual, but it doesn't really seem to gain any charge at all. It just seems to hold it. There's no real way to charge the battery from the engine. It's supposed to do that, but honestly, I've had it on for a 2-hour journey this morning and I didn't gain any range at all. So I don't know, maybe I'm doing something wrong, but it doesn't appear to be increasing, which it's useful when you can charge it up on the motorway in the knowledge that you're going to approach a town later on where you can keep it in electric mode. As for the handling, well, you get 4MATIC all-wheel drive as standard, which is about right on a car like this one, and you can actually get an off-road package on the 350D and the 400D models, but driving this on a wet, slippery field at the weekend, which is probably all the kind of off-roading you're ever going to do in this, it did it perfectly well. On the roads, it doesn't really have that kind of power delivery to make the all-wheel drive feel necessary in 95% of conditions. But again, if it snows and you haven't quite got the right tyres on, then you'll welcome that all-wheel drive assistance. But again, and I keep coming back to this, it's the vehicle's size and how that translates to how it drives. And you know, a lot of cars can shrink around themselves and feel smaller than they actually are. This thing doesn't. It still feels absolutely humongous. I mean, you've got the high up driving position, so you can see the extremities of the bonnet, but otherwise it feels like a proper boat. I mean, at low speeds, actually, the ride comfort, I think it could be a little bit better, because going over some sharper bumps, you feel a little bit too much in the cabin, I think, more so than you do in a Q7. And actually this car's got the smaller 20-inch alloy wheels that you can get with it. It hasn't got the larger 22 inches, so that's not an excuse. And again, going over speed bumps, which are quite large and just sticking up in part of the road, it can feel like it can wobble and pitch and roll a bit, so you need to get used to that. But then once you start to speed up and you start doing motorway speeds, then the ride quality and the refinement all round is absolutely superb. This thing just gobbles up miles. You can barely hear the engine if you've got the engine on, and the ride comfort, unlike where it's just a little bit fiddly at low speeds, at higher speeds, it's absolutely fantastic. But I do stand by the fact that it could have a bit more body control, not just through the corners and regardless of what you do with the adaptive air suspension, but also just driving slowly around town, where something like an Audi Q7 or a BMW X5 just has that bit more control and also maintains a ride which is probably a little bit better. And finally, because this is a Mercedes-Benz, it has tons and tons of driver assistance tech. And while I won't go through all of it now, some of the things that stand out are an adaptive cruise control, the Distronic cruise control that'll slow down when you get to roundabouts because the car knows exactly where it is and then accelerate through a roundabout. You still have to keep an eye on what traffic is coming though, so bear that in mind. It's also got lane changing assist, so you put the indicator on and it'll shift the lanes for you with the steering. Again, the adaptive cruise control will look at speed limit signs and then slow down to a certain speed limit in theory. And also something else, if the car detects that you're about to get into a crash, it does a number of things, including playing static noise through the speakers. The idea being that the big bang, when you do have the crash, it doesn't hurt your eardrums too much because that static noise has almost prepped your ears or nullified the impact of that collision. It's all incredibly clever stuff, but if you don't like your cars driving themselves almost for you or trying to drive themselves for you, then you will need to delve into the menus and just turn all of that stuff down. So, you've decided that you want to buy a Mercedes-Benz GLE, but you're not quite sure which version you want. Well, here's our top 3 choices. For the cheapest one available, then you want the GLE 300D AMG line because it comes in at just under £60,000. And if you're a company car driver, then you want this, the plug-in hybrid version, because it's got only 7% BIK. Finally, if you're a performance fan and for some reason you don't want any of Mercedes' actual performance cars and you want this, then get the GLE 63S 4MATIC Plus AMG model because it's got 612 horsepower, and that's a lot.
So, should you buy a Mercedes-Benz GLE 350 DE plug-in hybrid? Well, it's fairly pricey and the low-speed ride could be a little more controlled, yet there's no denying that this is a car hugely fit for purpose.
It's practical, it's spacious, the performance is good, it feels premium, it's comfortable 90% of the time, but more importantly than any of that is that it's the first plug-in hybrid car that I've driven that actually makes sense. You've got the big diesel engine to do the motorway miles, then you've got the electric motor to do smaller miles around town with zero emissions. It's just so logical. And because Mercedes-Benz are the only ones to offer this kind of diesel plug-in hybrid setup in an SUV like this, it's the one I'd go for without a second's thought.